Welcome back to the Drive to Dayton podcast. I'm your co-host, Michael Roth, joined by TJ Peatross of NEO Spotlight. It's finally here, Final Four weekend. We're down to four teams in every division, which now means 28 teams are left still dancing, and they'll be competing in state semifinal games split between Wright State University and Dayton, and also championship games, which are all held at UD Arena. TJ, we figured our opening question would be, what do you think about the new Final Four weekend setup? It's very different from last year. Every game going on in Dayton. Yeah, just take it away. What's your overall thoughts heading into this weekend?
Man, honestly, it feels like an early AAU tournament, man. Shout out to our guy Martin RPI, friend of the show. He put together a nice little graphic organizer to kind of help everybody see what games were going on which days, potential overlaps, what games you could see, what games you would likely have to miss out on. And Thursday and Sunday obviously are, pretty simple. Friday and Saturday it gets tricky, right? Those are the 2 days you got to figure it out. You got to realize, you're going to miss out on some games that likely would have wanted to see, but it's the reality of the seven division format, unfortunately. Um, and it's tough to do. It's no easy task. I'm not sure what the right answer would have been. I know Martin put together like a schedule of what it would look like if all 21 games were at the same place. And as awesome as that does sound, um, a state semifinal game at 9 a.m. on Thursday doesn't sound great either.
It was very
Um,
cramped. It was basically impossible to execute without unless no games went to overtime. So one of the days would have gotten messed up, and you wouldn't be leaving the gym until like 11:30 p.m.
and it the and obviously, if you guys have watched the show long enough, you guys know in no way, shape, or form am I a defender of the OHSAA. But it does seem like they were in a bit of a lose-lose, right? Last year, even though we did get some really good Final Four games in some cool locations, a lot of people that I run into talk about those games at the field house that, you and I were both at. I know when I saw the Wyoming Maysville game and Columbus Academy Cincinnati Summit Country Day games at Wittenberg last year, those were really cool environments as well. A lot of the complaints were that the Final Four games weren't on the same weekend. Some people complained that that there was a week in between, or that the Final Four games were too spread out. So the OHSAA listens to those complaints. They put the Final Four games and the championships all in the same city. Over the course of 4 days, you get 21 games, and no one's happy because the schedule looks so wonky.
People are never
I
happy. Is
no,
is the
I don't know. I don't know what the right answer would have been. I really don't. I do look at some of these like gaps in time though, and a part of me does wonder if it was possible for them to squeeze this in a weekend.
okay? Counterpoint.
I know
I'll,
it's tough. I'm looking at it because, like, I
I'll be
mean,
covering the
Friday.
Kentucky games, which are ridiculous. Listen to how they do it. They play games at 11 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. You don't go back in the gym to play again till 6 p.m. So that 1:30 game usually ends around 2:45, maybe 3 o'clock. You have over 3 hours in between session one and session two to start playing. So whatever you want to get on for these like wait times in between games, it is so much better than what I will be dealing with at Rupp Arena on Wednesday and Thursday night. I can't believe I will be watching four games and have to arrive to the gym at 11 a.m. and will not leave until 10 p.m. Ridiculous.
And for
This is
those of you
much
who don't
better.
know, yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Roth isn't talking about the semifinals and championship games, but a pretty cool tidbit in Kentucky is you play your Final Four game, and then if you win, you turn around and you play the state championship the same night. I always thought that was insane, personally. Just because I know how emotional and how strenuous a Final Four game could be, and just the idea of having to turn around and play a game 5 hours after that. It's pretty crazy, but I'm going to run through the schedule really quick, if you guys haven't seen it. But on Thursday, you have your D4 and D3 semis split up between Wright State and UD Arena. Friday, you have the D5, D7, and D6 semis, along with the D4 state championship and the D3 state championship. Same thing, those are both split between UD and Wright State. Saturday, you have the D2 and D1 semis, where I'll be spending most of my time. Unfortunately, I'll have to miss out on the D5, D7, and D6 finals. And then lastly, on Sunday, you have the D2 final and the D1 final. I guess that, I mean, I like the idea of being able to get out, Sunday at, a good time. Usually when I leave state championship Sunday, I'm not getting home till, midnight or after midnight. Um, but there being only 4 games on Thursday and then 2 games on Sunday, and then like Friday and Saturday being as crazy as they are, it just seems like there could have been a little, I don't know, a little wiggle room there that make this a little less hectic. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is about as like cool as last year was. Obviously, last year, like you mentioned, the games at the Fieldhouse were sick. Wittenberg was sick, but the week off definitely did lower some of the buzz around state championship weekend. I'm gonna be at Rupp on Wednesday and Thursday, so I'm gonna miss all of the Thursday games. I really wish that Maysville, Wyoming game was the potential championship. Would have been perfect for me. But I think that this is a pretty good balance. Like I don't have any major problems with how they set this up. The way I'm gonna do it, I think I'm gonna stay at UD Arena all day on Friday, catch the two D5 semifinals, the D4 and D3 championship. And then on Saturday, I'm going to go to the D2 semis, skip the D5 championship, and then move to UD Arena for the D7 and D6 championship games. And then obviously Sunday, you've only got the D1 and D2 championships. So we'll be together for the D2 semis as of now. And then I'm going to head to UD while you said you're going to plan on staying at Wright State on Saturday. So just giving you guys a heads up on my plans.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is obviously all day Thursday, I'm going to do those 4 games. Friday, I will likely do the D5 semis at UD, and then head over to Wright State and potentially catch the D6 semis. I didn't feel like I needed to see the D4 or the D3 final, considering I just watched those teams the night before. Uh,
100%.
Yep, Saturday will be the D2, D1 semis for me, and then both the finals. But yeah, a few games, that I'll have to miss out on. I'm not too happy about. But we'll see. We'll see how it shakes up. It's definitely some wiggle room there. I don't know, man. I'm just looking at this, and the fact that there's more games on Friday than there are Thursday and Sunday combined. That you have 6 combined games between Thursday and Sunday,
People like
and
the weekend though.
you have 8 games on Friday and 7 games on Sunday.
Yeah.
Um, I just think there could have been another way, man. Just to kind of even it out, make it so you could see more games. I think I'll end up seeing what, 4, 6, 10. I'll see 14 of the 21 games. So you miss out on, I think that's really the
That's the most
best
you
thing you
can
can do.
see because
Yeah,
there's going to
it's
be
14.
games going on
Um,
simultaneously.
So, I mean, you're going to miss 1/3 of the games being played over the weekend. When you think about it like that, it's a bit of a bummer, but should still be fun. I'll be looking forward to the updates. Maybe I'll be able to get a link. Maybe somebody wants to hook your boy up. That way I can, watch some of the games, maybe have them playing on my computer while I catch some other games.
Sounds like you
Um,
already did that this weekend.
I did do that a little bit this weekend, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings on it. I will say I think that it is a slight upgrade from last year, even though I will miss, the final 4 games at the field house. I mean, that was awesome. But other than that, though, I'll take this
Yeah.
for what it is. But
All right, do we want to go into our weekly recap, talk about the games we were at?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, my first games last week were on Wednesday. Did you go anywhere before that?
No, I did Wednesday as well.
Yeah, so on Wednesday, I went over to Savage Arena at University of Toledo. I saw a doubleheader with CVCA and Toledo Central Catholic, followed by Mansfield Senior and Alliance. Um, it was interesting. I wasn't sure how those two games would go. I thought there could be two potential lopsided games, right? Having not seen Alliance or Mansfield Senior yet in person, I had seen Toledo Central Catholic and CVCA, and Toledo Central Catholic is rolling, man. I think that they're a team that can dance to whatever song you want to play. They did a really good job of pressuring CVCA, didn't allow them to get comfortable. And CVCA had a really difficult time just being able to create any advantage against the Irish, whether it was in the half court. They couldn't really get out in transition. But shout out to Coach Kevin Byrne at CVCA. I will say I saw them against Villa Angela St. Joe's earlier in the tournament, and I did think CVCA played a phenomenal brand of basketball. For him to reach, that far, that stage of the tournament in just his first year at CVCA, hats off to him. He was a long time coach at Walsh Jesuit. I think he had a couple girl stops in between, but great coach. And then I watched Mansfield Senior and Alliance right after that, in a game where I thought Alliance was honestly the favorite, and I expected them to win anywhere from 8 to 12 points. And man, Mansfield Senior shut me up pretty quick, man. The game ultimately was decided by the second quarter. The Tigers came out, man, and they just put a whooping on Alliance in that second quarter. I believe they held them to just 4 points. They outscored them by double digits, and ever since then, going into halftime, they had all the momentum and they never gave it back up. Um, J.R. Jackson from Alliance, along with Junior Parker Woods, those two played phenomenal games to keep them in it. Kalen Brooks from Mansfield Senior had a team high 19 points. It was a fun game though, especially that second half, but it did not go how I expected it to go. Roth, where were you at on Wednesday?
Yeah, on Wednesday, I went to the triple header in the Convocation Center in Athens. I couldn't pass up opportunity to see Maysville versus John Glenn, and the Panthers absolutely rolled past their conference rival. Little Muskies take two losses all season, both of them to Maysville. Gator Nichols was absolutely unbelievable. Obviously, everybody talks about him. They've seen him in the Final Four, two. Now, this will be three straight seasons and he was just incredibly efficient on the floor. But the difference in the game really was the Maysville defense. They didn't let John Glenn get hardly any open looks. They just did a really good job of preventing dribble drive action, switching when needed to, and rebounding. It was a true team effort by Maysville on the defensive end of the court. And then they defeated Circleville, who I saw win on Wednesday over Matt Combs and Unioto. Circleville senior Cole Nungester dropped like 30 points in the victory for Circleville. He was making shots from behind the college line. He's a big time talent from Pickaway County, definitely a priority small college target from the guard position. And then the last game of the night saw Ironton take down Eastern Brown as they erased a double-digit deficit from the first half. Ironton really just wore down Eastern Brown with their athleticism and physicality. Junior Ashton Lane is a big time multi sport athlete for the Tigers. He found a ton of success driving, spinning into the lane, just using his athleticism and physicality. Maybe the most talented athlete on the court. Ironton has a handful of scholarship and Division I football players on their basketball roster, and he certainly looks the part. I mean, Ironton in warmups almost looks like how some of those like Glenville teams looked from back in the day, where they just had like five guys who were going Division I for football and could all jump out the gym. These guys are a little bit built more on strength than the same explosive athleticism, but still a similar sense of we got a bunch of football first kids who are going out there and hooping, and they're gritty, they're tough. Unfortunately, they fell by just 3 points to West Muskingum in the regional final at the Convocation Center, but a very good season for Ironton. And then that moves me to Thursday, where we had the drama at Bowling Green before the game. So glad that got resolved for everybody who went to cover the games on Saturday. But the games did not disappoint. First off, Colonel Crawford, they dominated Seneca East as seniors Braden Holt and Payne DeGray were excellent as usual. Those are two guys we've talked about here on the show almost every episode. And then in the nightcap, Van Wert Lincoln View beat their conference and county rival Convoy Crestview in what was the best environment I've seen all postseason. Will Sheets really impressed me for Convoy Crestview with his physicality and interior production. The lefty is an absolute load on the block. And then for Van Wert Lincoln View, you had the Hammonds brothers and coach getting the job done. Max Hammonds hit a handful of three-pointers on Thursday night as their crowd was going crazy every time he made one from long distance. And despite being undersized, Lincoln View actually moves on to the Final Four after an upset of Colonel Crawford in the regional title game at BG. So Lincoln View will be dancing in Dayton this week. They'll be taking on Marion Local in the D6 semi. So that should be an interesting game. TJ, where were you on Thursday and Friday? Because we were both at the MAC title or MAC semifinals on Friday.
Yeah, before going over to Rocket Arena on Friday, I went back to my old stomping grounds on Thursday. I live in Cleveland now, but uh, I am a Canton native. My whole family lives in Canton, so it was nice. Me and my mom were able to go get dinner. New Mexican spot in downtown Canton called La Serena. It has the Ennio Spotlight stamp of approval. For those of you ever visiting the Hall of Fame city, would definitely recommend stopping by. But I saw a doubleheader of Warrensville and Glenville, which was a rematch of last year's regional final, this time taking place in the regional semis. Pretty even game, back and forth. Until I would say probably mid third quarter, things started to shift a little bit. So Glenville senior guard Theo Castro was out in the first half. I believe he had three fouls, didn't really play much. It was a basically like an even game heading into the third. Theo Castro comes in the second half, and that was pretty much the talk of the night. Theo Castro scored all 21 of his points in the second half to push the Tar Blooders past Warrensville for a second straight year. The nightcap was Canfield against Cleveland Central Catholic. This was a game that I thought would be very much determined by who controlled the pace. And I mean, the first half, it was all Canfield. I was sitting there and I was a bit worried for Coach Day and the Ironman because it just felt like I was sitting there and I'm like, God, this game just feels like a Canfield game. They were comfortable. They were able to find a rhythm and a flow offensively. Coach V was running some really good stuff, putting guys in great positions. Um, but deep down, though, I did feel like at some point, CCC has to go on a run here in the second half. They were down four, they're down six, they're down three, they're right there. They're not quite out of it, but they hadn't had a lead the entire game. And then they started to put on the full court pressure, and things started to shift really quick. They were able to fight their way back in it. Junior guard Donovan Driscoll got fouled on CCC's last possession, made both free throws. Timeout Canfield. Canfield had a shot to send it to overtime. And man, I typically don't care when I watch games, guys like who wins and who loses. I really don't have a horse in the race more times than not. But the way Canfield went out, I mean, Coach Velakovic drew up, I mean, an awesome baseline out of bounds play, having to go the full length of the court. The guys ran it, to perfection, had two basically point blank looks at the rim. And God, I mean, those two balls couldn't have been any more in the hoop before they came out. It was just like a heartbreaking way to watch a team lose in the postseason. But definitely one of my favorite games of the tournament thus far. Glenville would go on to beat CCC. CCC beat Glenville early in the year. I want to say it was around December. The Glenville guys were still getting their football dudes into shape. The Ironmen were able to take advantage of that, get a 4-point win. And man, Glenville kind of not only did they avenge that, but they avenged it and then some. They won the regional final by 16 points. moving on to the Final Four for the second straight year, where who knows, they may get, if they win, they may get a rematch with Maysville in the state championship game. They may see a Wyoming team. I think regardless of how Division Four shakes out, it should be a really fun championship, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, I agree. It would be interesting if you get the rematch of Maysville versus Glenville. I'll talk about my games that I saw on Saturday. Unfortunately, three of the four games at the Cintas Center were blowouts starting off the day, Division 5, Summit Country Day, all over Waynesville. Waynesville's 22 game win streak was snapped as they were just overmatched across the board. It was an impressive showing by Tim Martin, Max Joyner, but especially Dawson Tucker. He's a junior with a lot of natural ability, and Tucker had 12 points, the fourth most he scored this season, knocked in two three-pointers, tied for the second most he's had this season, grabbed 8 rebounds, also the second most he's had this season, and had 2 steals, tied for the fifth most he's had this season. So across the board, one of the most impactful games of the season for Tucker in a big spot. Second game of the day saw Cincinnati, Wyoming blow right past Dayton Northridge. Wyoming's 2-3 zone really gave everybody on Northridge besides Keontae Smith trouble to score, and Devin Evans led the way with 19 points. On the defensive end, the Cowboys' backcourt duo of Kellen Wiley and Darren Gray combined for 9 steals. And then in the third game of the day, this was the only thriller I saw as Trotwood Madison held on against Baden in what was a back and forth game that there were times in the game where I thought both teams might be able to run away with it, and it didn't end up happening. But senior Jacarius Reeves made some big time shots for the Rams as they fell in the regional final last season to Cincinnati Aiken. This year, they get over the hump in Carl Blanton's senior's second season in charge. So shout out to him and shout out to Coach Bo at Glenville, two guys who have been in charge for 2 years at their schools, been to two Elite Eights, BO, been to two Final Fours now. Now Coach Blanton Jr. or Blanton Sr. gets to his first Final Four with Trotwood Madison. And they're the only Dayton area team to make it to the Final Four across all 7 divisions. I expect that place to be crazy on Thursday night, cheering on Trotwood Madison. And then finally, in the nightcap in Division One, Cincinnati Princeton rolls past Oak Hills in a total mismatch from the start. Despite the fact that Oak Hills defeated Princeton in the regular season, this one went the total opposite way. Princeton's defense just suffocated an Oak Hills team that doesn't have much offensive firepower. It was a well-coached group by Coach Price, but they just simply did not have the horses to run with Princeton in this game. And if they weren't shooting 55, 60% from the floor, they weren't going to win, and they could barely buy a bucket on Saturday. So dominant performance by Princeton. Coach Wyant making it to the Final Four. Shout out to him. And the door is kind of wide open for Princeton now because of a couple games that you saw on Saturday.
Yeah, so Saturday was when I was trying to decide which games I would go to for the regional final day. I was a bit up in the air between Columbus, possibly going down to Dayton, catching the Lima Senior Winton Woods game, which looked fantastic, by the way. That environment, while it was at a high school, looked like a blast. But I did end up staying. I ended up making the trip to Columbus, where I saw a trio game starting off with Westerville North and New Albany, a game that in the preseason I thought would be inevitable in Central Ohio. Uh, Although New Albany throughout the regular season definitely gave me some scares and a little worries, I thought they took a couple, uncharacteristically, bad losses by their standards. But they made it. And I wasn't sure how this game was going to go, if I'm being quite honest. I thought there was a good chance that Westerville North would roll. I even lost some tacos to a good friend of ours, Zach Fleer. But Westerville North did end up, pulling away victorious. But I mean, it wasn't by much, man. I think they won by 8 was the final, which is significantly closer than what I thought it would be going in,
I think it
and
was
is
a three
about what
point
I
game with like
yeah
2:30
it
to go
was.
before an Elijah McCree three.
Man, and that was a big time three too, man. Speaking of Elijah McCree, he was sensational, from opening tip to the final buzzer of that game. Not only one of the better shooters in Central Ohio, but in my opinion, I think he's one of the best unsigned seniors in Ohio's, 2026 class right now. He was phenomenal. But yeah, it was a 3-point game at one point in the fourth quarter. Westerville North was able to, hit a big shot, go back up six, and then they were just kind of able to cruise a little bit after that. But phenomenal effort by New Albany. I thought junior Kelby Martin was really good, made a ton of shots. Marco Matucci, obviously the Toledo commit, had his moments. It was a great game though, and it was about as good as I could have wanted it to be. Second game was Newark against Hilliard Bradley, and I figured this one would be a bit of a bloodbath, and that it was. This was a rematch of a game that took place earlier in the year where Hilliard Bradley was able to win on a buzzer beater. They did not need a buzzer beater this time around, as they held Newark to 23% shooting from the field. I believe Newark finished the game on 10 of 44 shooting, something along those lines. And Hilliard Bradley's defense, man, was just phenomenal. I don't think those guys could have been any more prepared or locked in as they were on Saturday. And they got a lot of momentum from that game going into the weekend in what I think is a wide open, Division One field now because of this last game. So the Pick Central Lakota West game, guys, if I'm being completely honest, I don't get on this show and lie. I may tell a joke, but I'll never lie. That's what my students say. Um, but the Pick Central Lakota West game was the one game I was honestly the least excited about going into the day. I was, a part of me was hoping that if Centerville won, the Centerville Lakota West game would be at Xavier. I'd be able to go down there and see 4 or 5 games in a day. That didn't happen because Pick Central knocked off Centerville, and guess what? They knocked off Lakota West as well, which in my opinion is the biggest upset of the tournament thus far. And if I watched that game, Roth, and I didn't know who Pick Central was, and I didn't know who Lakota West was, and if I didn't know any of the players on the floor, in no way, shape, or form did that look like an upset on the floor. It just didn't.
Pick Central
I've
has a
I've
lot of
had
guys who like are
man,
now.
dude, I've had the luxury of watching Lakota West multiple times throughout the year. They've been one of my favorite teams to watch throughout the season. Um, But man, I don't know if I've seen them come out that flat before. So they went up 7-0. Pick Central calls a timeout, and it was just like, oh God, here we go. The route is on, is what I was thinking. And shout out to Coach Kruger and company, man. They came out right after that timeout, went on their own personal 8-0 run, took the lead, and then it was just a battle after that. But then Pick Central at one point, man, I want to say I think it was the fourth quarter, maybe in the third, they went up by 14. And that's when it really like kind of sat with me. I'm like, these guys are going to win. And if they're not going to win, they have a damn good chance of winning. But they just had a lot of seniors, a lot of guys who just flat out competed on the defensive end of the floor. Senior Titus O'Neal, despite fouling out late in the game, was big time with his energy and his effort. He was a rim protector, a rebounder. He was on the floor for 50-50 balls. Senior guard Avon Snyder played the best game I've ever seen him play, finished with a game high 21 points. Albie Moore, a junior guard for the Tigers as well. He's a kid that I saw early in the season. I thought he had a chance to be a pretty good player. Man, he's progressively just gotten better and better as the years went on. And he was a major, major difference maker. I think what surprised me the most in this game, though, was Lakota West's inability to stay in front of the basketball. A team as athletic as they are and as dynamic they are, especially at the guard spot, they cannot keep the Tigers in front. These guys were able to turn the corner, put the defense in a rotation, and they made them pay. They shot the crap out of the ball on one side of the floor, and then they turned around on the defensive end and just flat out played so much harder. It just looked like they were the better team, and they were. It's the reality of it. I mean, you can say a lot of things, right? Whether Lakota West was potentially looking past those guys, blah, blah, blah. I tell people all the time, you don't make it to the regional final by accident. If you're in the regional final, you're a pretty damn good team. And the Tigers are playing their best basketball of the season. And guys, it wouldn't shock me if they knock off Hilliard Bradley and go to the state title. That is a winnable game. For a team that, many people predicted, was kind of like middle of the pack in Central Ohio, or oh, they aren't what they used to be. I think Coach Kruger is doing perhaps his best coaching job of his career with this group. And he's got a group of guys right now that are bought in completely on both sides of the floor. They're sharing the ball, they're playing together on both ends, and they are flat out competing. Like you said, they have so many athletes and different guys that are able to make plays in a variety of ways. Not a team that I would want to play if I'm Hilliard Bradley or anybody. I'm hoping these guys have a couple of days to cool off. But I will be curious in that Bradley game what the pace of that game looks like. Um, and I want to see how Pick Central does versus a set defense. Um, I'm just curious. I think that is a very, very intriguing game to me. And I think it's a game that could go either way. We'll make our picks later in the show. But with that being said, guys, give us a minute and we're going to bring in our guy, the one and only, back to take his victory lap on us, Kurt Stubbs. So we'll be right back. Yeah, Stubbs, I bet if your ass would have lost, we wouldn't have seen you until 2027 though,
Congrats to the champ.
huh?
16 regional title picks for Stubbs, 14 for Roth, 13 for TJ. It was the Margaretta versus Columbus Academy game. I would have tied it, but Stubbs, what's your phrase that you said after Columbus Academy won?
You never pick a pizza, man.
And man, that whole region, it could have went a variety of ways. I mean, you look at that Afrocentric Academy game, went to overtime. I had a few people tell me that Afrocentric, the team that I picked to win the region, had that game won multiple times. But shout out to Columbus Academy. I mean, they get an overtime win over Afrocentric in the semis, and then they turn around in the regional final and go to a double overtime with Margaretta in a game that I watched the entire second half in both overtimes. And that game was a roller coaster, guys. I don't know if either one of you had a chance to tune into it, but I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. It was like this one huge play after another, one crucial turnover right after another crucial turnover. It was a phenomenal basketball game. It genuinely was. Like it was a game that as I was watching it, I regretted not making the trip to go to it personally. But shout out to Columbus Academy and Jason Singleton, who I don't know when those Mr. Basketball polls, close. I don't know when guys need to have their votes in, but he sure as hell is, making his case. If he didn't already have a case before, he's done nothing but strengthen it over the last week or so. So
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to the guys who were nominated for Mr. Basketball. I thought it was a great list this year. You had Trey Drexler from Brunswick, Cameron Elwer from Delphos St. John, Marcus Johnson from Garfield Heights, Gator Nichols from Maysville, Trey Sagister from Tri Village, Jason Singleton from Columbus Academy, and Josh Tyson from Lakota West. You'll be able to see Singleton, Gator, and Elwer at the Final Four weekend.
So I'm curious if you guys know how this works exactly, right? So there's six districts, right? You have the Northeast Inlands, the Northeast Lakes, Central Ohio, East, Southwest Ohio. What's the other one? Northwest Ohio.
Northwest
And
and
then this,
Southeast.
yeah. And then this year we had seven seven candidates, right? And one of them was so we had two from Southwest Ohio. How does that work? Did that work because there was a tie between Tyson and Sagister, or did they pick? Do you get what I'm saying?
I don't
Because
know.
sometimes you get two guys from a region. I want to say the one year, I believe when Colin White won, we had Marcus Johnson and Jesse McCullough were nominees because I think there was like a split vote between the two. But I don't recall ever seeing like an other category where another guy just gets thrown in the mix while there's already a unanimous pick from that same region. Unless I'm mistaken here, can one of you guys enlighten me on that?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe one of
Uh,
our viewers can help us out.
yeah, yeah, I'm not sure how exactly that works. It's interesting because, I think, well, Marcus Johnson, if he doesn't win it, would be the first player that won it as a junior to not win it as a senior, I believe.
I think Cups did the
Um,
same thing.
Cups, yes, right. That's right. That's right. Um,
OJ Mayo too, technically, if you want to count him because he left after junior year.
right, right.
Yeah, played as a
Um,
senior.
yeah, I think, TJ, you brought up a good point. I think we can all agree that not all paths to different places are the same. When you look at Columbus Academy, I would assume we would all agree that you beat Harvest Prep in the district final, you beat Afrocentric, and you beat Margareta. I mean, no one in Division 5 had a path like that. And not only, did they have that path, but Singleton, I mean, I never want to say somebody single-handedly because you've got four other guys out there with you that are, hopefully doing their part, playing their role. But 25 against Harvest Prep, 28 against Afrocentric, 34 the other day in the regional final. I mean, he's stating his case in a big way. And it's nothing against, Cam, who in my mind is probably going to win it. Nothing against, I mean, he's a great, great player. But, he hasn't really had the opportunity to show it on the D7 stage because it's just, I mean, it's just not what Singleton's had to go through on that Division 5 platform. But, I think when you look at Elwer, you're looking at the whole body of work of 4 years. He finally gets his team to the finals or to the state tournament, 2,000 plus points. All that he shoots such a high percentage of threes. His team wins. Um, you know, I mean, to me personally, I feel like Singleton should win. I would probably have them ranked. Probably, man, it's just so hard. Singleton,
It's hard to
Marcus
compare. It's just
is
two completely different situations, two
it.
completely different
Gator,
divisions.
man. I mean,
It,
it's
it, it's
it's hard to not include Gator. You're looking at a guy that's state runner up when the world was right, with four divisions. As a sophomore, last year as a senior, he willed that team against Glenville in the state championship. He's the school's all-time leading scorer now. I think he's close to 2,000. And they're going to go. They got a shot to win another one. I mean, it's really this is hard. This is a
and
hard pick.
and you're 100% right because and I think what makes it more difficult already, right? You're just trying to compare guys' overall bodies of work. They're all in very unique, situations, different circumstances, different level of talent around them, different
Mhm.
competition, so on and so on. But what makes it even more tricky is what is the criteria? Are voters given a criteria on what they should value? Is it simply the guy that's the most valuable to his team? Is it a combination of talent and team success? Is it just quite simply who's the best player in the OHSAA? If that's the case, then it's down to Marcus Johnson or Jason Singleton. So it's like just what are we voting on? Are we voting on the guy that did the most with the least? Are we voting on the guy that had the most difficult path? Are we voting on the guy that had the best regular season? Are we factoring in, the tournament so far? Are we taking into account what's going to happen in the regional? What happened in the regionals? There, to me, there's just not enough structure in this process to really say who's the winner. I think a lot of it comes down to I hate to say it and sound like a parent, but it does come down to politics. You get a lot of small town newspaper, suburban towns, who like the underdog story or the small town team. You get the Central Ohio voters, who have a tendency to vote for the guy who's going to Ohio State or, who the best player in Columbus is, whatever. You can make their cases for everybody in the region. And what also makes it weird, there's not and I don't expect there to be a lot of guys like me and Roth, and there's a few other people across the state who see everybody, right? Like, I watch Northwest Ohio, Northeast Ohio, Central, Southwest, you name it. How many other voters do that? How many of these voters are going to be voting against guys that they've never seen play in person?
Hmm.
It makes it tough. It really does, because then it's just, who can paint the better narrative.
Yeah.
You know, who
I
can
think
go on the best, political run?
I think the first box that ultimately always gets checked is, hey, let's see if there's a guy going to Ohio State. If there's a guy going to Ohio State, his team wins a significant amount, that's who I'm voting for. It doesn't matter about anything else. Isn't it ironic that last year when Marcus Johnson he was a no-brainer winner. He flips that to South Carolina, and all of a sudden he kind of fell off the map as far as like, you know, getting a lot of attention and things like that. He's no good to us anymore. You're going down to that SEC world, and um,
I do think their
I
team success had a lot to do with
don't.
that this year. He didn't have like the same marquee wins that he did last year. Like last year, that Garfield Heights
Yeah,
team was tough and they beat a lot of big time teams. This year, they struggled in a lot of their marquee games.
I just think it's always the first box is always Ohio State. Um,
It would have been interesting if Alex Smith stayed at Upper
yeah,
Arlington.
yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. There's about probably four guys that if they win it, I can go, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand.
It's funny because before like 2 weeks ago, I would have said like no way you can really vote for Singleton. Like team had an inconsistent year, whatnot. And now after the last 2 weeks, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't blame you if you voted for Singleton. So
I'd go as far as to say Singleton should probably be the favorite. I think if you take everything into account of what we just said, man, I don't know if there's a guy who is doing more with less, if I'm being honest.
yeah.
And just the level of competition he's had to play as well. That I mean, that has to get factored in. But are we just basing this off the regular season or what? Like, we don't know. When does
Yeah,
I don't
when
even
was
know
it? When were the votes like required? Because they might have had to vote before that Margaretta game.
maybe
I
they
don't
did.
know.
I know Matt Gould, friend of the show. He'll be able to answer this. I will gladly retweet his reply. I'm sure he's going to tweet something out whenever he watches this on his drive to wherever the hell he's going. So
Probably to
he'll definitely
Dayton.
be able, yeah, he'll definitely be able to give us an answer to this. But yeah, I'm curious, man. I would love to just bring a little more structure, to this process and have a set criteria. What is factored in, and are those weighted factors? Should we count one more than the other? Because I mean, I think Stubbs hit the nail on the head. How was Marcus Johnson's by far the favorite last year. It was hard to vote against him. And now there's people who saying he should be in the top three. The guy averaged 30 points a game.
Right.
I mean, he did everything he possibly could. The Garfield's, up and down season, it sure as hell wasn't a result of his play.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Marcus win it, Cam Elwer, or Jason Singleton. Um, those would probably be the three for me. I think had Drexler not gotten hurt, and his team is playing in the Final Four, which they had a just as good of a shot as anybody else to do. Maybe we're singing a different tune. But gun to my head, I would say those three, whatever order, however you want to slice it, Elwer, Johnson, Singleton, one of those guys will get it, and one of those guys should probably win. So.
We ready for some picks?
Yeah.
All right. Division one. Here
Ooh,
we
well,
go.
let's start at D7 and work
All
our way
right,
up.
start at D7 again. All right. This is,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, we got Delphi St. John versus Malvern up top, and then Kalida versus Jeromesville Hillsdale. Shout out to Stubbs for getting that one right. Another big tally in Stubbs regional championship picks victory. I'm gonna go with Delphi St. John over Kalida. Impressive for Kalida to get by Montpelier in the regional championship game, and Delphos remains the clear favorite for me. So I'll pass it over to you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, I'm going with Delta St. John's too. I think in the preseason, I thought there were two divisions that were just completely sealed off. I think the water was cut off for virtually every other team in those two divisions, and that was D5 and D7. With that being said, though, I'm going with Delta St. John's. I'm taking them to win over Kalida.
Yeah, that's pretty safe pick here. I was looking to see when that was. Glida, Delphi St. John's opened the season back on November 28th. Feels like years ago. I think that was a 15, like 45, 30, something like that. You know, credit Kalida. They were kind of up and down, but there was a lot of games that they were really close in this year. Is just kind of waiting for the tide to turn for them. I think they'll beat Hillsdale. Um, Delphi St. John's against Malvern. You know, Malvern, great story. Really a crazy regional for those guys. Beating Southern, coming all the way back, beating Leesburg Fairfield after a delay and having to play the next day. Coach Tucci, man, I know he doesn't, it's about Malvern, it's about the town, but dude, it's so awesome for you, man. Yeah, and Coach Tucci be the first to tell you, like, the path was nice. If you go back and look at his track record of all the teams that he's had that have been great, that he's run into a monster along the way, usually up at the Canton Fieldhouse when they were in D4, or, not being able to beat Highland in a district or Rosecrans or somebody like that, Shady Side. Two things can be true. I'm really happy for him. I'm really happy for that community to be able to finally do this. But also, yes, it worked out well. I mean, we're looking at a watered down field now, right? But at the end of the day, I just see this as the Delphi St. John's Invitational. And I hate saying that, but I mean, dare I say, I mean, possibility of running clocks.
And because of that, and I hate to say this, I don't really plan on going to a Division 7 game at all this weekend.
They got them
Um,
in a bad time slot, man.
they do.
They
They
do.
really do. And and that's why before you came on, I was talking to Roth about the schedule and basically just saying how, there's 4 games on Thursday, only 2 on Sunday, but then Friday has like 8 or 9 games, and then Saturday has like 7 games. It just feels a bit uneven. Like Friday and Saturday are just absolutely loaded, where Thursday and Sunday are just kind of chill. Before we keep going with our picks, though, what are your quick thoughts on just the format of this year's like Final Four and state championship? I told Roth that it seemed like they tried to go off of the feedback from last year. A lot of complaints about the Final Four games not taking place the same weekend as the state championship games. They do
Mhm.
that, and now they're still getting complaints. Where are you at with it?
Well, I kind of look at it as like you're trying to play a game of chess that you can't win, because you have 7 divisions. That just, nothing you're gonna do is gonna work because you have too much. Um, your last year, the probably the downside is that you weren't playing the semifinals on the same weekend as the state. But there were some good things that came out of it. You know, people were very, very excited about the field house in Canton and the atmosphere there. And but then there's also, well, it's, you know, it's still not the same because it's not the same weekend. Okay, so now you've asked people to spend another day. Okay, so now you've extended it to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you're asking people to try to take another day off work for Thursday. You've put it up against the opening day of the NCAA tournament. Um, you know, that's huge. But I just think the more they get involved, the more they mess it up. I still say, and this, you know, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's probably a moot point, but there was no reason to go to such drastic measures to go from 4 to 7. How about we go to 4 to 5 just to get a feel of how that worked? Okay. Instead of, why do we have to jump from 4 to 7? You know, everybody wants to compare basketball to football. You're comparing apples to oranges. Like, and to me, you know, I'm a football guy, you know, and I follow it pretty closely. 7 is too many divisions in football. They never should have went past 6. And if you don't think so, you know, tune into
Look
the
at a
state
Marion local
championship.
state championship game.
Yeah, tune into the state championship game in D7 every year, where if it's not Marion local, it's another team for their conference beating the ever living snot out of, you know, this year it was St. Henry. In the past, it's been New Bremen or Fort Recovery or, you know, whomever. It's just, you didn't need 7 in football, but comparing football and basketball, totally different things. Like, the football is, I get it. It's a physical game. Kids can, you know,
It can
really
be a
get hurt.
safety issue
It can be a safety issue, right?
St. Ed's against some random Division 5
Yeah,
public school. It would be a safety issue. Basketball is
right.
not a safety issue. It is not
Basketball is not a
unsafe.
safety issue. We should have went, I get it, 4 to 5. You know, D1, there was too much of a gap from the Dovers of the world to St. Xavier. Okay, those are light years away, but you make it 5 and then you kind of, you know, shuffle it out from there. But I just don't think that there's anything that you're going to do to get it, you know, because we know what it used to be like. So you can't tell us something that we already know. We already know what it used to be like, and you're trying to give us a different meal and tell us that no, this is a better meal. No, I've had the other meal. It's better. So don't tell me what meal I want. That's the one I want. It's better. But I don't know. Long story short, you know, I just, as I said in the start, I think you're playing a game of chess that you can't win. Um, you know, if a positive here, at least they tried to do something based off the feedback they got. So, you know, kudos to them for that. But I just think whenever you have to, I mean, you guys know this. How many guys sent you, um, you know, something that they made to make it, you know, the schedule, like, okay, this game is going to run up against this game in this time slot, you know. So from 2:15 to 3:30, we got this, but we also got this. How many of those things did people send you? Easy to follow schedule. There's no easy to follow schedule, but shout
No.
out to my guy, Dustin Jarrett from Flow Sports. He sent me a really nice one. I know Martin RPI, he did one as well, but when you have to do that, that's not good.
No.
I mean, it
And
doesn't have
it's
to be that difficult.
no, it doesn't. And it's not. It's easy to follow compared to what we had, what the alternative was. But,
Yeah.
even when you look, like I was looking at like the official OHSA website, and there weren't even set times. It just says that, this game will take place 30 minutes after that one. So you really don't know when these games are going to start. to know when you're going to be able to, what games you're going to see and what games are not. And for me, it's fine because, I'm not buying tickets. But if I'm somebody buying tickets and I'm trying to figure out what games I'm going to go to, and I don't know what time this second semifinal is going to start, and to see if I have time to watch it before I go to watch this state championship game at Wright State or whatever, it's tough. It's a tough place. So I don't know. But with that being said, let's move on to D6. I told you guys on the very first episode, I was a year too early. I picked Berlin Highland last year to win the state championship in Division Six. They inevitably lost to Monroe Central, who would go on to win the state championship in D6. But I am going back with Coach Schleybaugh and the Hawks in D6. I think they are one of the best defensive teams in the state, regardless of division. And I think they are just on a mission right now. And I have Berlin Highland over Marion Local in the state final.
I have the same thing. I think Marion Local might get tired of playing these East District teams in the six state title if it goes that way. Obviously last year Monroe Central gets it done. This year, I think Berlin Highland is the best team. Shout out to Kirtland for getting down here. And also shout out to Van Wert Lincoln View, a team I got to see at BG. They already defeated one team that I thought was bigger and stronger than them. So certainly wouldn't put it past them to beat another team that's bigger and stronger than them in Marion Local.
Yeah, this is kind of a fun field. You got two perennial football powerhouses on opposite sides of the bracket. They're no strangers to each other, but I'm glad that Kirtland was able to because last year they made the state semifinals, but obviously it was under different circumstances. They're trying to be the first team to win a football basketball state title in the same school year since Marion Local did it in 17-18. They're going to have a tall task against the Hawks. Zerger coming over has been huge. When he has a big like that, it's like his defense goes to a whole nother level. And it has this year. They're giving up 28 points a game in the tournament. They've held teams under 30 10 times this season. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, they held a team in Caldwell who had a really good season to like 15 points in the tournament. Listen, we've all played pickup before. Like, you let off the gas, at some point, and a team gets a few buckets. 15 points in a 32-minute game, that is against a team that's, that is a pretty decent team. So I think they advanced there. Marion Local, Lincoln View is intriguing. Lincoln View really, if you look at that game against Colonel Crawford, man, whether it was Colonel Crawford just not shooting the ball well or Lincoln View having a lot to do with it or a combination of both, Lincoln View, we talked about them earlier in the season. We were texting back and forth about them. I kind of felt like they were a little bit of like a year early in what they're doing here. They did lose I think his name's Coyle, broke his collarbone there in the regional final. So obviously that's not going to be good, but Marion Local, man, that I picked them to win that region. How they did it against Tri-Village was kind of surprising. They just kind of mauled them. Trey got 25, but they just wore the other guys out, wore Trey out too. But I think you're right, Roth. I think you're right, TJ. I just think this Hawks team's on a mission, man. I'm going to take Highland over Marion Local, kind of like you guys. Same thing.
All right, moving to Division 5 up top. We got
all right, moving to Division 4. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, Stubbs, I don't know if you saw, but the big bad favorites were losing at halftime.
Roth, unfortunately, they don't hang banners for that.
They should. They probably should. up at
Yeah,
halftime.
we were calling for him to throw the white towel in, but apparently they decided to come out and play in the second half, and it worked out for them.
But
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with Lutheran East over Columbus Academy here. I will say though, Summit Country Day, while they have had an up and down year, they have started to figure things out as of late. They're playing some pretty good ball with senior Tim Martin, who is a Rhode Island commit, back in the fold and back healthy. Ultimately, I think it comes down to whether or not Summit Country Day can take care of the basketball. I mean, you're looking at a Lutheran East team who, has sophomore Dylan Ziegler, junior Devontae Perkins. But the two unsung heroes for that group, man, are Chris Hill and Ty Harrison, who are, in my opinion, two of the better on-ball defenders, not only in Northeast Ohio, but across the state. I mean, you're talking about two 5'10", 5'11" guards who don't really look the part, but man, they compete on that side of the floor. They embrace that side of the floor, and they're going to make your night a living hell if you are an opposing point guard. Summit Country Day, while they do have the length and athleticism and the overall talent, you look at guys like sophomore Max Joyner. It's some of those it's those guards, man, that really concern me. I'll be curious to see if Summit Country Day can get the ball out of those guys' hands, get have a guy like Max bring it up at times, before they initiate the offense, things like that. I think they're going to have to get really creative with how they deal with Lutheran East ball pressure, or else I think that game could get away from them pretty early. On the other side, I got Columbus Academy over West Muskingum. I just think Jason Singleton is going to do what Jason Singleton has been doing this whole tournament. So,
yeah, I'm taking Lutheran East over Columbus Academy. I will say, are there like a little similarities between that Summit Country Day Lutheran East matchup and the Pick Central Lakota West matchup in terms of like teams with a lot of athletes kind of figuring stuff out against like the clear favorite in the division? I mean, I certainly don't expect them to win the game, but I feel like an upset there would kind of feel like how that Pick Central Lakota West game felt, maybe just a little bit.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't overly shock me. I mean, would I be surprised? Absolutely. But you and I have been watching these Summit Country Day kids for, 2 to 3 years. We see them in AAU, we see them in the summer, we see them during the season. We know how talented this team is on paper. And they seem to be playing some of their better basketball as of late. And they kind of cruise past that Waynesville team, like you mentioned earlier. So we'll see.
I think these could possibly be the two most competitive semifinal games. I don't know if either of you have seen. Well, no one in this tournament is going to play harder than West Muskingum. I mean, I don't even know if it's possible to play harder than they play. At the end, they probably lose a little. No, there's no singletons. And I think eventually that's is going to be what the difference is in that game. But I do think it's going to be a really competitive game. You mentioned Summit Country Day. They're 9-3 since Tim Martin's return, and two of those losses were I think in his first 3 games back. So they're kind of evolving at the right time. Those Lutheran East guards last year in that state championship game against Columbus Academy were just absolutely phenomenal for a freshman and 2 sophomores, playing like they'd played 100 games on that stage. So I don't see them, shying away from the challenge here at Summit Country Day. I think the Lou pulls away probably, late in the fourth quarter and wins that game. And then tell me if you guys picture this. I kind of picture that Columbus Academy Lutheran East championship game looking similar to you remember how Turtle Kwasniak was just going nuts last year, and then it just, they just kind of ran out of steam. I kind of feel like that's what that Academy Lutheran East game is going to look like. in the end,
And
losing just too many bodies.
going off of that too, to kind of further your point there, Columbus Academy in that game against Margaretta, I know they were missing the one kid. I forget his name, but he's like a Northwestern football commit. But there were some other people reporting that they were missing about 4 or 5 guys. There were a couple kids on the floor in that second overtime, guys, that weren't even in the roster. They weren't even on their tournament roster.
Gym
So you
class
they had
guys.
they had JV guys on the floor because they were just out of bodies. So I'm curious if, these varsity guys who are on vacation or, whatever they do in Columbus Academy, that's way above my tax bracket. I can tell you that right now. I don't know what the hell they're doing. I would love to know what they're doing if anybody wants to invite Mr. Peatross along to enlighten me, for research purposes. I'm open to that if you're open to that. But I don't know what this group is going to look like on in the semis, let alone the championship. Are these guys coming back? I know they're on spring break right now. Are they going to be back by Friday or Saturday or Thursday?
Are
Who
they allowed
knows?
to
I
come
think
back
that
by the coach? Would you let a kid back who has a vacation in the middle of a playoff run? I don't think I would.
if it's 5 of them, you bet your ass I am.
All right, yeah, maybe.
If it's really 5 guys or 3 guys or 4 guys, yeah, I'm letting them back. Especially if
Maybe it
it's
was
out of
like a
their
school
control.
sponsored thing.
I have no clue, and I'd love, maybe I'll reach out to Mr. Singleton,
That would help.
Jason Singleton Sr., great guy, for those of you who know him. Speaking of Mr. Singleton, man, he's funny. He's always came across as like a real stoic guy, man of very few words, man of very few emotions. Until you watch him at a Columbus Academy game, man, my guy gets into it. It's like a different guy comes out. It's pretty awesome to watch him go into dad mode, but. Maybe I'll reach out to him and see if we can get some scoop, and maybe I'll report back to you guys for the show when we recap the tournament. But moving on to Division Four, I'm going a little different than what most people would say. I know Maysville is absolutely rolling right now. The way they beat John Glenn really, really surprised me, to be honest. I didn't expect them to lose that game, but I expected it to be a little more competitive than it was. I believe at one point it was a running clock. Am I right, Roth?
Yeah, the final like 4 minutes was the running clock. Gator had
Which
more
is,
points than John Glenn when he was subbed out with 2 minutes to go.
yeah, that's insane. As crazy as this might sound, though, with that being said, I'm picking Wyoming, guys. I think last year, I had the luxury of watching that Wyoming Maysville game, which was not only the best game that I saw last season, it is undoubtedly in my top 5 high school games that I've seen probably in the last 10 years. Just from the atmosphere to the result to the way it played out, the individual performances, you name it. It was just a perfect game for me. I think last year Wyoming was a little hesitant to press Maysville just because they were worried about how well they were shooting the ball at that time. I'm curious of what this looks like, man. If Maysville really ramps up the pressure and you let Kellen Wiley and Darren Gray and these guys fly around, make plays, get deflections, speed these guys up. Don't let Maysville get comfortable into a rhythm. We've said that before, right? You look at a Maysville team that beat Lutheran East, you don't face much more pressure than Lutheran East. So it's not like these guys are incapable of handling it. But I think just kind of sitting back and letting Maysville find their rhythm and get into a flow. Maybe Wyoming zones them up a little bit. Maybe they throw some different variations at them. I'm just very curious to see how Wyoming approaches this. But I do think they have the horses to win. And I just know how difficult it is to repeat as a state champ when you start going up the ladder of these divisions. So I'm going with Wyoming over Glenville. I do think Glenville gets it done over Sandusky Perkins. And then I think Wyoming, with that senior group, gets a state championship that they wanted so badly last year.
Yeah, I'm going Maysville over Glenville. Yeah, I don't know much about Perkins. Wouldn't mind seeing them in the state title game because I will be missing the semifinals here. It will be interesting. I mean, Wyoming's been really comfortable sitting in a zone these past couple games against Southwest teams. So how quickly can they sort of flip that switch defensively? I'm not too sure. But I will be following along from Lexington for that one. So, I mean, you could probably play this game 10 times. It probably goes five each way. So, yeah, I guess I'm tilting the scales by picking Wyoming to win two or Maysville to win 2 straight years instead of a 1-to-1 split. But yeah, I mean, either way, I don't think anybody knows exactly how this one's going to play out.
Yeah, I I think you're both right. I don't think. I mean, we could sit here and analyze, but these type of games are going to come down to the smallest of detail. Um, TJ, I think you said it on the last show that we did. Like, uh, yeah, I'm an idiot, man. I picked John Glenn to win that region. Listen, I made that. Listen, I'm a fool, but I'm not going to be a fool twice. I picked against them the last time. I'm not picking against those dudes again. I'm not. Listen, I'm not going to let the Southtown, you know, come after me twice. All right. I feel like, obviously Wyoming can win this game, but there's just those guys just find a way, man.
They
They come,
do.
and then, I think I love the story of Perkins. I think Glenville probably presents something, a little differently athletically than they've seen to this point as far as in the tournament play. I know they've played Sandusky this year, but Glenville's going to bring a little bit more of a physicality. Um, so I think we get Glenville and we get Glenville and we get Maysville in the finals. I'm going Glenville, man. Tar
Wow.
Blowers, Tar Blowers in a redemption game. Okay, here's my rationale. This goes against everything I just said. Um, I feel like this could be very similar to Pick Central Centerville 2023, where it took every single ounce of energy out of Central to beat Centerville in that semifinal. And where Marquez Johnson hits the floater across the lane there. They come and play Akron Hoban the next day, and they were flatter than Kansas.
Stubbs, I got a counterpoint for you though.
Okay, I love your counterpoints.
What if this is like 2021 D2 where you had St. V versus Lima Shawnee up top and then DeSales was just waiting to get beat by either one and Glenville doesn't have a Des Watson. So we'll see.
Yep. Yeah. I just feel like, Glenville was right there last year in that game. It got away late. Um, they want that redemption, got that football title. Now are they going to get that basketball title? I think they beat Maysville in the finals.
Well, we'll see. It could happen. It could
There
very
was
well happen.
nobody on this panel that expected that pick, by the way.
No, I did not. I will say, and honestly, I don't really know what to make of Division 3. I think this is about as wide open of a division as we have out of the seven. You have Toledo Central Catholic against Trotwood Madison, and then you have Steubenville against Hoban on the other side. Hoban has been one of the more interesting teams to have made the tournament. The only time that I saw Hoban play this year, they lost by 35 to Trotwood Madison. They turned around the next day and lost to Aiken by 44. So in 2 days, they lost to two Southwest Ohio teams by a combined 79 points.
And
And then
here
they
they
just
are,
turned,
Final Four.
and here they are. I mean, shout out to Coach TK, one of the best coaches in the state of Ohio. You would be very, very hard pressed to name, more than 6 or 7 coaches who do a better job on a year-to-year basis with talent, without talent, average team, doesn't matter. These guys win. Despite those two bad losses that I mentioned, man, they picked up a lot of notable wins over the year, including beating Kent McKinley in their very first game of the season. So this is a team that is capable of beating good teams. God, I just don't know how this is going to go. Um, I'm going to go Toledo Central Catholic over Hoban in the final. Um, but I genuinely think, guys, this is a division where you could potentially see four different state champs. I do. I think, yeah, I think Steubenville may slightly be on the outside looking in when it comes to those four, but they have as good of a chance as almost anybody else in this left. I don't know how this is going to go. I'm curious to see where you guys go.
I went with Toledo Central Catholic over Steubenville. It's going to be tough for Toledo Central Catholic. They're going to be playing a road game against Trotwood Madison at UD Arena Friday night, 6 p.m. or maybe Thursday night, 6 p.m. actually.
Yeah, Thursday.
Um, but I just think that Toledo Central Catholic has seen teams like Trotwood Madison this year. They've seen that sort of athleticism, defensive pressure, and they've done pretty well against those teams. And I mean, they just saw a Mansfield team who wants to play a similar style of basketball. And then at the bottom, I'm rolling with Big Red over Hoban. You know, the fact that they were able to beat both Hartley and Watterson, that tells me that they're kind of matchup independent. Like Steubenville can win in multiple ways. The biggest difference is Watterson, who plays more similarly to Hoban. Hoban plays more similarly to Watterson. Watterson doesn't have a guy like John Johnson. So if you tell me that Hoban's able to keep the game tight and John Johnson just goes out and wins it at the end, I could see that happening. But I'm going Toledo Central Catholic over Big Red in the championship.
Yeah, I think, when you look at that region that Hoban was in, there's probably 4 or 5 teams before this tournament started that I probably would have taken over them to advance. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, I
Um,
mean Garfield Heights and Cheney, two teams that they beat. I thought
yeah,
both were likely going to beat Hoban, and I was wrong not only once but twice.
I mean, you got Hawken and Ursuline in there as well, and um, but yeah, I think Roth. I agree with what you said, man. They danced to 2 different tunes in the regional when Big Red beat Hartley one night, and then you got to come back and play a completely different style against Watterson. So that kind of tells you that they can dance to different tunes. Um, and the thing with Big Red is if they're making those threes, they can compete with anybody. And you have a guy. And if the state's not familiar with the name Santino, they will be after this weekend. Santino can play. Typically I'm a little more harsh on my critique of guys from that area, just because that's where I'm from, and um, Santino can go. And it's not just him, man. They've got other guys around him, the Bowers brothers, Trey Wiggins, guys that can make shots. They've got, obviously Steubenville's going to be tough. They're going to be tough kids. It's just part of the environment. But I do think they beat Hoban. I think it's a really close game. I think Toledo Central Catholic um, beats Trotwood, and I think Toledo Central Catholic gets that elusive state championship over Steubenville in the D3 final.
All right. Copying Roth's pick. I see you. I see you. No, I'm just kidding. Moving
Well, it
on.
was good.
Yeah, moving on to Division Two, where we have Westerville North versus North Royalton up top, Lima Senior versus Massillon Washington on the bottom. This should be some fun games at Wright State University on Saturday afternoon. I think Westerville North, the prohibitive favorite in the first matchup, and the second matchup could really go either way. Maybe surprising some people. I don't think we're getting that Westerville North versus Lima Senior game either this year. I'm going to take Massillon,
Mm.
Washington to defeat Lima Senior. Credit to the Spartans, but they were pushed by both Winton Woods and Cincinnati Aiken in the regional rounds. And I just think that Massillon, Washington probably has a couple more dudes than both of those teams do, and they're playing some really good basketball. So I'm going to go Westerville North over Massillon Washington in the state title game. Westerville North goes back to back.
And coming into the season, this was the division I was the most excited about. I thought there were just a ton of different matchups we could get in the Final Four. It didn't go exactly how I thought it would go. I thought that, Euclid, Massillon, and Toledo St. John's, right? I didn't expect all three of those guys to be in the same region battling it out. But unfortunately, that's what we got. I will say, while I do think Westerville North will win, I did have a lot of fun watching that North Royalton team last year. They do play a really good brand of basketball. They got a bunch of different guys that can really shoot it.
They're
It's
better this
I'm
year
for,
too.
yeah, and I'm forgetting the big kid's name. I
Klingbeil,
think
Nolan,
yeah, he
baseball
was out.
kid.
Yeah, he was out for the majority of the year. Came back at some point, if I'm not mistaken, right? Was he out early?
I'm not sure. He was playing when I saw them around Christmas time at that Brunswick tournament, and
I think
then
it was the fact that he didn't play last year and then decided to come out this year. It's some
mm,
combination of because they didn't have him last year, to my knowledge.
yeah.
Um, but with him being back, I know a lot of the local coaches have spoken really highly of them. I have not gotten a chance to see North Royalton yet, so I am excited to see what they look like this year because I enjoyed them a lot last year. But I think Westerville North is just a machine right now. I think they had a really close game against New Albany, but I think they go back to regularly scheduled programming. I think they get a double-digit win over North Royalton. And man, that Lima Massillon game. Guys, is there a better semifinal all weekend than that one?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so either. I think, I feel bad sometimes for like the Canton, Massillon area because while outsiders look at it as Northeast Ohio, people in Cleveland don't really look at Canton and Akron and Youngstown and Massillon as a part of Northeast Ohio. Basically, it's like if you're not in Greater Cleveland, you're like an outsider, basically. So I don't think a lot of people really know how good this Massillon team is. I mean, they have seven, like, not only do they have a couple guys, they have like about 7 or 8 guys that on any given night can lead them in scoring. You look at sophomore Terrion Wells that comes off the bench who can really fill it up. Braylon Gamble, who I think is about as well-rounded of a player as you can get in a high school game. 6'3", 6'4" wing that, can be a secondary ball handler, can bring it up, can initiate offense, can get downhill and score. He does a lot of things. You look at Geo Jackson, 6'5", freaky high major football player, but can, fly all over the basketball floor. Xavier Williams, who shoots the crap out of the ball. Jadis Thigpen, who's like a bull in the china shop. I mean, they got dude Stubbs. Like we talk about Lima Senior. Lima Senior gets all the Instagram reels. They get all the highlights. This Massillon team is right there in terms of just freak athleticism and guys that can make plays. But I do have Westerville North. I say, I gotta get, I gotta get the flowers, man, before I throw a little dirt down. That's just how it goes. I'm going with Coach Q, man, and Lima. And Westerville North beat Lima Senior earlier in the year. Lima Senior was without Sean Foster, who was battling an ankle injury. That was a really close game, even without Sean. But I still think Westerville North gets it done. I think it's going to be a very close, competitive game. But it's going this D2 tournament is going to be a lot of fun, regardless of who comes out of that Lima Massillon game.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, is this is crazy. I mean, the amount of like football schools that are in this tournament this year, you got Ed's Pick Central, you got Massillon, you got Toledo Central Catholic, Trotwood, Steubenville, Hoban, right? You got Glenville, you got Kirtland and Marion Local, and then Delphi St. John's used to be a football school, but
Hillsdale.
I mean that's just insane. Um, I think you guys are. I mean, Westerville North advances. Lima Senior beats Massillon in a great game, probably high scoring. Um,
I hope so. Man, I
and I
hope it's
think
high scoring.
I mean,
It's
both teams, both, I think Lima averages like just under 80 points a game. They're at like 79 point something. And then Maslin is just above 80 at like 80 point something. There's no way in the world this game isn't just a lot of fun. There's no way.
I think I got Lima Senior moving on, and I got Westerville North versus Lima Senior. And this is hard to believe that this will be the 10th anniversary of Lima Senior losing at the buzzer to Westerville South, as Jason Morrow will constantly remind you of. I think in the 10-year anniversary of that, Q gets it done. Lima Senior beats Westerville North.
Wow. All right. Interesting, Stubbs. Moving on. Division 1. Princeton versus Lakewood St. Ed's and Hilliard Bradley versus Pickerington Central. These are two interesting games. I saw Princeton over the weekend. Their defensive performance was great. They do have to make a couple more layups than they made against Oak Hills if they want to get by St. Ed's, but I kind of think they do. So I'm going to take Princeton over St. Ed's. And in the OCC versus OCC battle, I'm going to go with Hilliard Bradley. I trust their guards. I think that they're going to be able to dictate the pace. Um, picking against St. Clairsville and Pick Central is my favorite thing to do when Stubbs is on the podcast. So give me the Jags. And then I'm going to finally take the Jags to get it done. I got Hilliard Bradley over Cincinnati Princeton. Like I said on Twitter, I'm really happy that Hilliard Bradley is back at States because their 2020 team that got their run cut short in the Elite Eight very, very, very likely would have made it to States and would have had a decent chance against either St. Ed's or Moeller. I mean, that year was stacked at the top of Division One, but that was a great
And
team.
this their first ever Final Four, right?
Correct. And that
I mean,
2020 team,
I would love to, yeah. I mean, that 2020 team, that was with like Matt Alaka and those guys, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
AJ Murgon and Keaton Norris was a junior. Like they had
yeah, those
both of the
guys were going to roll.
Mayfield brothers. So yeah,
Yeah, those guys were going to roll. I'd be very curious to see how many teams in Division One have won a state title in their very first Final Four ever. I think that stage is a little bit different. Um, and I think you kind of have had to been there before at some point. And you're talking about a team that has been there before, a coach that has been there before. I'm going to go against the grain here a little bit. I'm going with Pick Central over Hilliard Bradley, guys. While I love the Hilliard Bradley guards, they might be my favorite backcourt in Ohio, with Kipton Norris and Ben Mergen. But this Pick Central team just has a lot of different bodies. While I think Hilliard Bradley, is one of the better defensive teams in Ohio, they have a lot of guys that just really play hard on that side of the ball. I think Pick Central has guys that can do that, but then also have a greater impact on the offensive end. I think there's 4, 5, 6 guys that are capable of, getting anywhere from 6 to 10 points on that Pick Central team. And I don't think those guys are going to be afraid of Hilliard Bradley. I think they're going to find a way. I think it's going to be a slugfest. I think it's going to be a really, really good defensive battle. Very well coached game. I'm going with Pick Central in a razor thin edge over Hilliard Bradley. On the other side, I got Princeton. Man, that's a tough one. I think this D1 field is very, very much so wide open. Um, is it far-fetched to say all 4 of these teams could win it based on how they're playing right now?
or
I
they
feel like
all
we haven't
can.
said. Yeah, I feel like we haven't said that in a while about a D1 field. At the most we've been able to really count 3 teams, but it usually boils down to 2. Um, man, I don't know. I got Princeton over Pick Central guys in the final. I'm not overly confident in it. But a guy that I am confident in is Coach Wyant over at Princeton. But I think this should be 2 great games. I will be there for both. And I will be there for the final as well. So I'll be happy if I'm right. I'll be happy if I'm wrong. I'm just hoping for good basketball, and I hope you guys are too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys laid it out pretty well there in Division One. You asked Pick Central first time they were there, 2012. They got it done, but they did have an NBA. They actually had two
Couple
NBA
guys.
guys.
Yeah.
Um,
Couple really
two
good
NBA,
players.
two NBA guys, a third pro in Javon Bess, a fourth pro in Taco Charlton, an NFL player. So
Not a bad team.
not a bad start for your first time in a state tournament, but um, I know Pick Central was really hoping Bradley was going to beat Newark just because Central does not match up well with Quackenbush. They don't have a guy, they don't have a guy can that can guard him. They don't have somebody with that size, that girth that can guard him. He's a really hard matchup for them. Bradley, I think, is really good. They're really good. Don't get me wrong, but I think Central matches up much better with them than they do with Newark. Um, I think what it will come down to is Central's got to make free throws. Um, if they make free throws against Lakota West, that's a 15 to 20 point game. And you're going to be in a bloodbath with Hilliard Bradley. It's going to be a collision all game. So in a tight game like that, you got to make free throws. I do think that championship DNA that many people thought was never going to be seen again at Pick Central. There's a few of you out there, you are. You thought it was gone. It's not gone. Coach Kruger can coach, and people need to put some respect on his name. The fact that he was able to get this team to the state, he did it in 2018, beating a Hilliard Bradley team that was far better than him in the regional final. He can coach. Yes, they've had talent, but I think you saw this year that he can get it done because they weren't the favorite by any means. And I do think they beat Hilliard Bradley. I think this Ed's Princeton game is a throw that coin up in the air, man. I think actually both of these games are, to be honest with you. I'm going to go with Flan. Flan's been there many, many times. He's been there many, many times. I think that could end up being the difference in this game. I'm going to go Eds, and then there ain't no doubt in anybody's mind that's listening to this right now who I'm taking to win this thing. And if you'd have told me, listen, if you'd have told me that 2 months ago that Pick Central was going to be in position to win the state, I would have said, I don't know what I would have said, but that's just a testament to what Kruger's done with this team. The improvement of Albie Moore, the emergence of Titus O'Neill, obviously that, Landon's got to be great this weekend, but I think Pick Central gets it done over St. Ed's in a rematch of the 2022 state semifinal game.
Yep.
Devin Royal, Sonny Styles, and Raheem Biles were playing then, so it's going to be a little different. But
I wonder if we've ever in the history of the Drive to Dayton show in Division One have we picked three different winners since
I
we've
don't
been doing
know.
this show. This is the fourth year of it. I
Probably
doubt that
not.
I
right,
doubt we've ever had our Division One picks and we all went with somebody different in Division One.
right.
It's been a while.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys having me on.
This is the end of the show. So, any closing remarks before we let everybody go?
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah,
Say
You
hi
know,
to us if you see us this weekend,
yep,
whether at Wright
I'll be
State or at
bouncing
Dayton.
around. Yeah, I'll be bouncing around between UD and Wright State over the course of the 4 days. I'll be down there the whole time. You'll probably catch me at a Starbucks or Milano's getting some pizza. You guys will see me around. If you have any good dinner recommendations, feel free to shoot them my way.
Tie
I'm
nine.
always down.
Tie
uh,
nine is the spot.
I'm always down for some good food, though. I might listen to Roth. I might not, to be determined. But I'll see you guys down there, and
yeah. Don't
we'll
let the
see.
don't let the seven divisions don't let the 7 divisions stop you from having fun, guys. Have a great time down there. Enjoy it, and just enjoy being with whoever you're with. Enjoy that time. You'll never get it back.
All right. Thanks for
Nope.
watching, guys. We'll see you
See
in
ya.
Dayton.